All right, gentlemen, just a quick refresher based on what we spoke about last week in terms of the features of a class. So I didn't bother to draw the table, in terms of having class, whether it be weight, height, score, and then frequency and so on, because I wanted to zoom in on the classes themselves. Now remember, in this particular case here, we're seeing 3 classes, and again, this is our first class, our second class, and our third class. If you had more classes, then it would be 4th, 5th, 6th, as how they appear in the table. Now, the first thing to note is that I'm just going to slide this over here so that we can make reference to it as many times as we want quickly. So, in the first class that we have, the first class is 1 to 6. That's the first class. So remember that even though this is a class, it can also be called a group, and it can also be called a class interval. All right. So even though we just refer to this as class or group, it can also be called a class interval. So we also have not only 1, 2, 3 classes, but we have 1, 2, 3 class intervals, or 1, 2, 3 groups. All right, so the first group, second group, third group, or first class interval, second class interval, third class interval. All right. Now the next thing is that these are class limits for the first class. So 1 and 6 would be class limits for the first class. This here would be the lower class limit for the first class. And obviously this would be the upper class limit for the first class. All right. So obviously for the second class, 7 would be the lower class limit, 12 would be the upper class limit. For the third class, 13 would be the lower class limit, and 18 would be the upper class limit. All right. So that's that. Now, what about class boundaries? All right. So remember I was saying that in a real life situation, if they're collecting data about something, if it's height and they're measuring the height of something, the heights won't be all perfect whole numbers all the time. So when you measure the height of something, everything is not going to be 1 exactly, or 2 exactly, or 4 exactly, or 5 exactly, or 6 exactly. Right? Some things are going to be 1.02, some things are going to be 0.99, something are going to be 4.15, whatever units in height. So in order to really track those actual real life values, right, if we use class boundaries, it better reflects the capturing of the data. And I said before, when you start looking at graphs and drawing diagrams, statistical diagrams, you're going to appreciate that some more. So, but the class boundaries for these classes, remember I said that just take 0.5 from one side and add it to the other side. It's as simple as that. So this would become easily 0.5 and 6.5. So 0.5 to 6.5. So these would be, or this would be the class boundaries for this class. So this would be the class boundaries, or the class boundaries for this class. This obviously would be the lower class boundary. And obviously this would be the upper class boundary. So for this class here, the second class, or second class interval 7 to 12, or second group 7 to 12, the lower class boundary would be 6.5 and the upper class boundary would be 12.5. And for this one, the lower class boundary would be 12.5 and the upper class boundary would be 18.5. Very, 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 very simple. Just take away 0.5 from here and add it back to that. And that will be the class boundary, because what I want to do is to trap these values that are a little bit over, a little bit under the whole numbers. That's all. All right. So you understand class interval, class limits, lower class limit, upper class limit, class boundaries, lower class boundary, upper class boundary. Remember, this is 6.5 here. All right. The next thing that we want to understand is class midpoint. So for the first class, which is 1 to 6, for the first class, the midpoint or the class midpoint would be, just add them together and divide that by 2. So 1 and 6 is 7, and 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So that will be the class boundary, sorry, the midpoint for the first class 1 to 6. And again, it makes sense because if you have 1 to 6, if you have 1 to 6 here, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole numbers, or you have a whole number here. So what you do is you find the two middle, right? Add them together and divide by 2. So that would be 7, which is 3.5, which is what we got. So just simply add the limits, lower and the upper limit, and divide that by 2, and then you're going to get the midpoint of the class. Similarly here, 7 and 12 is 19. 19 divided by 2, that would give you 9.5. Here, 13 and 18, you add them together, get 31 divided by 2, that would be 15.5. So you can get the class midpoints of any class very, very easily. And of course, the next thing that we need to talk about, I'm just going to do it on the sheet. I'll put this over here just for speed. The class width or class size. And that's pretty easy. So class width, which is also called class size. Remember, to easily do that, just find the difference between those two numbers and you're going to get the class width. Obviously 7 minus 1, that's 6. Most persons make the mistake of subtracting these two numbers and say the class width is 5. No. So even if you do this as well, 12 minus 6, you're going to get 6. If you do 18 minus 12, you're going to get 6. If you do 13 minus 7, you're going to get 6. Right? So that would be the class width or class size. And of course, the formula is upper class boundary minus lower class boundary. And if we look at the first class 1 to 6, remember that the upper class boundary is 6.5. So it will be 6.5. The lower class boundary is 0.5. And 6.5 minus 0.5 is 6. So whichever way you want to go, whether using this or just subtracting these numbers here, then you're good to go. And that's as far as class features go. So we should understand clearly know what a class interval is, what class limits are, what the lower class limit is, the upper class limit, what class boundaries are, the lower class boundary, the upper class boundary, the class midpoint, and the class width or the class size. All right, gentlemen? So again, I hope you found this video insightful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.